Am I the asshole for kicking my sister out of my house after she laughed at my husband for having breast cancer? My husband John, 41, was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer August of this year. It had been hard for us, and John had difficulty accepting the diagnosis as he can't believe a man can have this type of cancer. He felt both embarrassed and isolated. It took a toll on my mental health, and I was diagnosed with depression. Last Saturday, we invited our family to share the unfortunate news. We agreed that telling them our circumstances can only help us accept our situation. After dinner, when John told everyone his diagnosis, both our parents empathized and offered their support. My sister said maybe the cancer cells got confused because you have huge man boobs. Dad called her out and I took her to the kitchen. I told her she was being insensitive and cruel to make a joke about my husband. She said I'm blowing it out of proportion as she was just trying to lighten the mood. I got angry with her because instead of apologizing, she made excuses and called me too sensitive. I told her to get out of my house and I won't be talking to her anymore unless she apologizes to me and especially to John. She had to leave at 10 p.m. and she called an Uber. When my mom found out, she got upset and said that I overreacted.
Storytime about how I stole a famous celebrity's boyfriend. Growing up, I loved the fashion industry and loved clothes. I knew I wanted to make that my job in the future. And just to let you guys know, I'm not the prettiest girl. I'm not anything special in terms of looks, but I'm pretty funny and I have a really great personality. When I was 16, I moved to New York to become a fashion stylist, and I quickly started gaining traction. I became an intern at a really big fashion house, and this helped me a lot. As you can imagine, I started meeting a lot of celebrities and just really important people doing this. Although I never really got to style anybody, I was still in the room when they were there for fittings and different things. After a few years, I quit that internship and went into another company. This new company, I was getting paid more and I was just happier in general, and I was able to style a bunch of people on my own. I wasn't styling any celebrities or anything like that, but just basically people that worked in the industry and people that had different events to attend. But one day this celebrity comes in. And no, he's not an A-list or anything, but he's pretty famous. He came in with his girlfriend, who at the time was also famous. I basically had to style both of them for an event, and it was really fun. But here's the thing. Clearly, he thought I was really funny, and we were making jokes back and forth. The fitting took longer than usual because we had some pieces coming in, so we had to wait for them to come in for them to try it on. But she was clearly annoyed. Obviously, waiting around for clothes is not the most fun thing, but at the same time, we were giving them champagne, we ordered them amazing food, and she was literally getting her tushy kissed. I could tell that he was really embarrassed by her behavior. At one point, he even told her just to sit down and relax, which she did eventually. I left them alone for a few minutes before the clothes arrived. Once they arrived, I came in and I gave him the pieces. She literally ripped the dress out of my hand and went into the changing room. He looked at me and apologized and said, you know, she's just in a bad mood today. And I said, I totally understand. This was my job, so I knew I couldn't react any other way, but I wanted to slap her across the face. While she was changing, he started making small talk with me. I made a few jokes and it actually made him laugh, which I was really surprised. And then he even complimented me about what I was wearing. I mean, I did look really good. Once she came out of the dressing room, she started complaining right away about the fit. It didn't surprise me whatsoever, but at the same time, I just really couldn't believe how she was acting. Then I realized that she was probably jealous because he was talking to me. He was like going out of his way to talk to me. They finally left and he said bye. But 2 days later, he comes back by himself. He wanted me to style him for an event coming up that weekend. And that's when I realized I needed to take advantage of the situation. I had the feeling he liked me, but I wasn't going to come out and say it. So I turned up the charm 1000%. We talked for about 2 hours. We even talked about each other's families and what our favorite foods were. So that's when I asked him if he wanted to have a quick dinner. Trust me, I was so nervous to ask him, but I knew I had to do it. And he said yes. We finally got to the restaurant and sat all the way in the back. I kind of got the feeling that he didn't want anyone to see us, but it made sense. That's when I asked about his famous girlfriend. Then he quickly apologized for her behavior and told me that she's never really like that, and I told him that I'm used to being treated that way by celebrities. And he said that I didn't deserve that kind of behavior from her. That's when I asked him if he was happy with her. I could tell the question caught him off guard because he didn't really know how to respond, and that's when he told me that he was happy with her, but he didn't know if the relationship would actually go anywhere. We proceeded to have a few drinks, and I could tell this was really loosening us up. Out of nowhere, I grabbed his hand and kind of massaged it, but he didn't pull it away. That just confirmed the fact that he liked me. Then he asked me for my phone number. We said goodnight and went our separate ways. But for the next week, he texted me every single day saying good morning. Of course, we would text pretty much all day long. I finally decided to tell him how I felt, which he obviously already knew, and he told me that he felt the same. Then he was the one that asked me out, and we actually actually went to the beach. We were at the beach for about 6 hours and we had such a great time. At the end of the beach day, I kissed him and asked him if he really wanted to be with his girlfriend. He stayed quiet and didn't answer, but the following day he messaged me and told me that he broke up with her. Here's the bad news. We only dated for 3 weeks. On the 3rd week, he actually broke up with me and told me he was dating someone else. I saw it coming. He's now dating another celebrity. Their relationship isn't public yet, but I have a feeling they're gonna announce it soon. I keep texting him and asking him to take me back. I was actually falling in love with him. What should I do, you guys?
Am I the asshole for refusing to go to a party that was planned for me? Like most women, I had spent years fantasizing about my wedding day. So when my fiance asked me to marry him last year, I was over the moon. I spent hundreds of hours planning and arranging our perfect day.
Aww.
Little did I know that my fiance and his best man had arranged a prank. So when it came down to anyone objecting the wedding, the best man stood up and says he objected. Anyone who knows anything about weddings knows that regardless if it was a joke or not, the wedding cannot go forward if objected. So despite the best man and my fiance saying that it was a prank, we could not get married yesterday as intended. I was devastated, as all that money was now out the window and non-refundable.
Oh, no.
My soon-to-be sister-in-law had arranged an after-party at her place for us. Instead of me going, I walked down the aisle to the door by myself and took off from complete embarrassment.
My boyfriend wanted to take me and his 2 best pals on a trip to his mother's friend's property in Hawaii this summer. We'd been preparing for this vacation since the spring, and one of his male buddies eventually dropped out, leaving just the 3 of us. My partner and I have been dating since November, and our relationship is serious. We had, and still have, discussed moving in together, and he has stated, and I agree, that this is a long-term relationship in which we intended to stay. When his male buddy backed out of the trip abruptly in early June, his female friend phoned my boyfriend and informed him that now that it was just the 3 of us, she didn't feel comfortable with me attending because she didn't know me well and didn't want to be a third wheel. She stated that if I went, she would not accompany me on the vacation. They adjusted the plans and made it a trip for just the 2 of them, and they moved the destination to a beach in Costa Rica without notifying me. I was trying to figure out when to ask for time off this summer and hadn't heard anything about the Hawaii trip yet. So I asked my partner which week in August I should reserve for the vacation. He informed me that he had spoken with his friend and that she did not want to travel if I went, so he was going to accompany her to Costa Rica. He suggested we go back a week later, perhaps to Mexico City or somewhere else. I was upset, and I attempted to explain how I felt to him, especially because this wasn't a case of being invited and then uninvited from a week-long tropical vacation with a girlfriend of his whom I'd never met before. As a form of reparation, we eventually decided to take a trip to Copenhagen, which we both wanted to see. I also requested to meet her so that I could feel more at ease on the journey. We spent the 4th of July in the city where she and her partner reside, and while it was lovely to put a person to a name, it turned out to be a very cold trip, and she was not at all welcoming to me. My partner commented on how unpleasant she was to both of us and expressed astonishment that she didn't act cordially towards me. I went out of my way to get to know her and her boyfriend. I'm quite outgoing and pleasant, so this should be easy. But even after several days, nothing clicked. They were also cool to each other. They squabbled a little about their future plans and his own 3-week trip without her, which was scheduled at the same time as theirs. This had been scheduled before ours had. This had been my attempt to make myself feel better about the trip, so I informed my partner that I still didn't feel at ease and that I was offended by the way it had been handled. I had attempted to smooth things over amongst us all, and I had requested that he come up with something that would make me feel better about the trip. When his family inquired about the trip, they were all surprised that he had planned it this way, and they told me that they would have been furious if they had been in my shoes, which sparked a fight in which I asked him to help me devise a strategy to make me feel better and more secure about them going together without me. He said he would never do something like this again, which doesn't seem like much of an offer given that this is a once-in-a-lifetime vacation to begin with. He offered to not go on the trip, but he had already paid for the tickets and made plans, and I didn't want to upset him and his closest buddy by interrupting their trip. He asked me for suggestions on how to make me feel better rather than just telling him what to do, and we stalled and stalled until the day of the trip arrived. I took the 2 of them to the airport after he bought me a bag of peanut butter cups. In this position, I feel completely ignored and insulted. I want to end our relationship, but I don't want to ruin something that has otherwise been wonderful. So, what should I do now?
Hands down, the craziest story I'm ever going to tell you. And before I get into it, it's incredibly important that you remember that everything I'm going to tell you is true and happened exactly this way. In 8th grade, I had a teacher, Mrs. B, and she could read my mind, and I found out the hard way. So I had her for English and history back to back, 7th and 8th period. And my best friend, Candy, who lived directly behind me, also had her for English and history back to back, but she had her in the morning. So at lunchtime, we would sit around and we would talk about whatever was going to happen in her class. Like Candy would give me the heads up. Like if we had a pop quiz, she would tell me what the questions are. And about halfway through the school year, I'm looking out the window and there's a little bit of a car accident. Now, Mrs. B can't see that from where she's sitting, but she gets up and she goes to the window and she's like, I hope everybody's okay. And I'm like, that's weird. You couldn't see that. And then another day I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about how I want pizza for dinner. And then she announces to the class, we're going to have pizza for dinner at my house. I'm like, what? But then it started getting more serious. So I hadn't done an English assignment and neither did Candy. And so when we got to lunch that day, I'm like, what happened? Did we have a pop quiz? What's going on? And she's like, no, actually, I don't think anybody did the assignment. So she just lectures the whole time. You don't have anything to worry about. Well, I get to her class and I'm staring at her and I'm like, ha ha ha, you don't know. I didn't do the reading. I'm just going to sit here all period. The bell rings. She looks right at me and she says, take out a piece of paper. Pop quiz. What? But then it got really serious. So one day at the end of class, 8th period, we had a fire drill and we were on the 2nd floor. So we had to go down the hall, down the stairs, up the hill, wait outside, and then come back in, up the stairs to our classroom. So we do all of that. And then she gives us free time because it's the end of the day. And I look over at her and she's like using an inhaler and she's having a hard time breathing. Now I'm like 12 and I'm thinking to myself, you know, if you took better care of yourself, you might not have these breathing issues. And right then she locks eyes with me and starts sobbing. So I freak out and I go home. Now, I've been telling my mom all about this along the way, and my mom's like, you're crazy. And I'm like, no, she can read my mind. I know it. And my mom's like, well, then you got to prove it somehow. So we come up with this plan that I'm going to think of a word and I'm going to chant it over and over and over until it drives her insane, and then she's going to have to say something. So I come up with the word popsicles, because, like, who's going to say the word popsicles? So I go to 7th period and I sit down, and I don't tell Candy any of this, okay? So I get to 7th period and I sit down and I don't say the word out loud, but popsicles, popsicles, popsicles in my head over and over. We get a break, we come back, 8th period. I'm not even listening to the assignment. I'm just thinking popsicles, popsicles, popsicles. So I know that I've never said the word out loud. So the time of the end of the day is like dwindling down, and it becomes like 10 minutes before the end of the class period. Mrs. B says, hey, don't you have to go get Candy? She had broken her ankle, and I was like her buddy to like meet her at her locker and help her get out of the school building and into our carpool before all the kids came and like trampled her. So I was like, oh yeah, is it okay if I pack up now? She's like, yeah, get out of here. So I get all my stuff and I'm walking to the door, and Mrs. B goes over to the window and she's sitting down and she's looking out the window and she says, you know, class. And I stop and I look at her because that's respectful. And she says, with all this snow and ice outside, I really wanna... And she snaps her head and she locks eyes with me and she enunciates the word popsicle. I swear to you, I swear that happened, and I'm going to have to post part 2, but it'll be up right now. Popsicle, the greatest story ever told. If you didn't watch the first part, it's posted right before this. This is going to ruin it for you. You're going to want to know the whole story. If you keep watching this, don't watch it. Stop right now. Go back. Okay, so she doesn't just say the word popsicle. She enunciates it. Popsicle while locking eyes with me, okay? I feel the blood rushing out of my body. I just back out of the class, book it down the hall, get down the stairs, get to Candy's locker. Again, I'm like 12, 13 years old. I have a freak out. I'm like, popsicle, she said popsicle. We can't go to school anymore. She can hear our thoughts. Oh my gosh, we have to quit. We have to quit. Candy's like, what are you talking about? So I try to fill her and I try to explain it. She's like, this does not make sense. We get to the carpool. The carpool mom is there. I tell her the whole story. She's like, you must have misunderstood this woman. I'm like, I did not misunderstand her. Every person that gets in the car, I tell them the story. They also think I'm crazy. I'm like, no, we need a petition. We need to talk to the principal. We need to remove ourselves. I'm never going back to her class. So we get home. This is before cell phones. I get to the house. I drop my backpack. I book it to the landline. I call my mom, my ally, and I tell her, she said popsicle. My mom's like, no way. I'm like, what do you mean, no way? Why would I lie about that? My mom's like, this is just too crazy. Like, there must be a misunderstanding. Also, I'm at work. I can't talk to you. I'll be home in a little while. So in the meantime, I call every person I know. If I have your phone number, I'm calling you to tell you the story. And if you're not there, I tell whoever picked up the phone the entire story, okay? I run out of people to call. I get the phone book. I get to the white pages. I'm just flipping through, calling whoever I can. If it's the wrong number, I don't care. I'm telling you the story. I see my elderly neighbor. She's out on her porch. I go pay her a visit. I tell her the story. Nobody believes me. Everybody thinks I'm crazy. My mom comes home. She sits me down. She's like, okay, start at the beginning. I tell her the whole thing. And she's just like, huh? I like honestly don't know what to tell you at this point. And I'm like, you can tell me I'm not going back to school, because I'm not, and I'm definitely not going to her class. And I'm talking to the principal, and my mom's like, whoa, none of that is happening. You are going back to school. We're not calling the principal. Like, this is just like, I don't know. You're just gonna have to move on with your life, okay? This is just one of those life things. And I'm like, you're crazy. So I took a shower. I go to bed. I'm like crying myself to sleep. The world does not understand me. My mom knocks the door. She comes in to check on me. And she's like, I just want to see how you're doing. And I'm like, how am I doing? I'm in 8th grade. My teacher can hear my thoughts. How do you think I'm doing? You can take me to school, but I am not going to her class. Just so that we're clear, you can drop me off, but you can't make me go. My mom's like, okay, this is getting out of hand. I'm like, yeah, I know. Thank you. And she says, yeah, so the thing is, today, during her lunch period, I called Mrs. B to see if she wanted to play a joke on you. Yep. My own mother. My own mother. And just to recap, my mother called my 8th grade teacher to tell her that I thought that she could read my mind. She gave her all of that information. And then they went through with the prank. Yep. I was a live-in nanny in New York City when I signed up to play this water gun assassination tournament. So basically it was played throughout the 5 boroughs in Manhattan over the course of a couple of weeks. And when you signed up, you had to disclose the following credentials: your phone number, your email, your home address, your work address, and an idea of your schedule. And the night before the game started, everybody had to meet these guys in the alley in the back of a truck.